Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. I'll start by officially welcoming you. Sawadee Kap. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Today is our group learning program, and we start our class with a meditation. And then after our meditation, I will move into some teaching today. And as part of our group learning program, we're in chapter 5, which is titled The Eightfold Path. The path for all humans to enlightenment. This is what you would need to learn in order to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful and joyful. So I'll be teaching you guys that using the words of the Buddha today after our meditation. So let's start with some meditation, which is a primary training that we need in order to move the mind to enlightenment. And the Buddha taught this as part of his teachings. So if you're on the floor, you might just sit comfortably with your legs crossed. Some people like to put multiple cushions under their rear to get their hips up in the air and lessen the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. When we're in a chair, we sit with our feet maybe flat on the floor or cross at the ankles. It's up to you, whatever is comfortable. Some people even like to sit in other ways, and there's other positions to use as well. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable, you could use this. But again, there's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Whatever's comfortable for you. You'd like the body to be comfortable, not painful, but not luxurious either, but comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during your meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be complacent and lazy. Or if you were real rigid, the mind would have a tendency to be overactive and uptight. But by just keeping the body erect, it keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. We're going to start with chanting to ease the mind into meditation, and I have chants on the laminated sheets over there on the table. You're welcome to get the chanting if you like. It's in the Pali language, and there's the English translations there for you as well, and you're welcome to chant along together. If you know these chants or you'd like to see these chants, you're welcome to chant along. Yeah, feel free to get the sheets. And then after we do the chanting, I will have some guidance while we're meditating. I will guide you for a period of time. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be completely quiet. And then I'll come out of the meditation with some chanting as well. Okay, so make yourself comfortable, whatever position is best for you. And then if you'd like to join along in the chants, you're welcome to. And then I'll provide you guidance after the chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakevanang Apivateyami Savakhato Mahakevata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakevato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso mahakeva Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang sammuno Sakhato rokavito อนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวะมนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use my voice just as a reminder that when you get to your next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Just whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I will once again welcome all of you guys, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to Watang Yu. Welcome to all of you guys online that are joining us. Today's class is about the Eightfold Path. This is the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is how you learn how to attain this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. Meditation is part of that journey that you need to build up a meditation practice. But you wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment. But you also wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So there's these 8 individual factors or 8 individual steps that an individual needs to learn in order to then reflect on them to independently verify them. And then you need to practice them in order to transform the mind and uproot the pollutions that are in the mind. So I'm going to walk you through this Eightfold Path today using the original words of the Buddha so that you can see what did he say about this particular topic. And then I'm going to teach it to you so that you can learn it. I will help you to reflect on it, to independently verify it, and then I will help you to understand how to practice it so that if you choose to do that, you can see the transformation to your own mind. The teachings of the Buddha, it's not about believe, and then something good happens when you die. That's not what he taught. He also didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. This isn't anything that he taught. Even if you see this associated with Buddhist temples or Buddhist teachings, the Buddha never taught these things. If you see his original source teachings, he never taught rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. He never taught belief. He encouraged students to learn to reflect, and to practice his teachings and transform the mind. The Buddha attained this peaceful and joyful mental state on his own without the help of any teachers or any guides, and then he made himself available to others in order to be able to learn how to accomplish that same mental state. He didn't teach rules or commandments. He wasn't trying to force anybody or convince anybody to do anything specific. Instead, it's each individual person's decision if they would like to eliminate things like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, the displeasure that's in the mind. If an individual is interested in eliminating that, then the teachings of the Buddha and individuals are here to help you to understand how to accomplish that goal. So I'm going to do that today with the Eightfold Path, because this is the core central teaching that is going to help you get to enlightenment. Without the Eightfold Path, you wouldn't be able to actually experience enlightenment. The Eightfold Path is essentially helping you to understand the natural law of Gotama. The Buddha teaches this natural law in many aspects of his teachings. He's helping you to awaken to this wisdom of the natural law, because when you have wisdom about this natural law, you will naturally make wiser decisions that lead to wholesome results. But when you have a lack of wisdom, you'll make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. So as I'm teaching you about the Eightfold Path, I don't suggest that you think about it as rules or commandments or anybody's trying to force or convince you to do anything at all. It's your life. It's your decisions and it's your results. That's what the natural law of Gotama is. Some people refer to this as karma. This is the Sanskrit version of this word. But the original source teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language. So in the Pali language, we refer to it as Gama. So people who study the original source teachings of the Buddha might use this word. If this translated to just one English word, I would just use that one English word because it'd be much easier for you to understand. But there's not just one English word that this translates to. So I still need to use this word Gama. So what Gama is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's not punishments. It's not rewards. It's not mystical or magical. There's no being or entity that oversees this and it determines who gets punished and who gets rewarded. That's not what the natural law of Gama is. This is a natural law that's functioning all the time, and it's affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. Just like the natural law of gravity, that it affected you as a child, whether you were aware of it or not. We weren't aware of the natural law of gravity when we were 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, but it still affected us. And then when we gained wisdom of that natural law, we made wiser decisions that produced more wholesome outcomes. When we lacked wisdom, we fell down, we hit our head, we cried, we were struggling in the world because we lacked wisdom of the natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of that natural law, and as we did, we started making wiser decisions, like tying our shoes, looking at the surface of the sidewalk, and we built this wisdom to now be able to do things like ride a bicycle, ride a motorbike, get on airplanes, climb ladders, and all these other things. So what you're doing on the journey to enlightenment, your own independent journey, is you're learning, you're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing to be able to understand this natural law of Gama, of cause and effect, or action and result. And it's the Eightfold Path that is the core central teaching that the Buddha taught, that everything else plugs into it and helps you to understand how to practice, how to understand this natural law through your own independent verification that the teachings are true, so that you can get to wisdom. So as I go today, I'm going to be sharing with you this natural law and helping you to awaken to this wisdom. That's what it means to awaken the mind to enlightenment, is you're awakening the mind to this wisdom of the path to enlightenment, awakening the mind to the wisdom of the natural laws of existence, awakening the mind to the wisdom of this natural law of Gama, of cause and effect, or action and result. So the first thing that an individual would need to start to understand is that there's this Eightfold Path with 8 individual steps, and it's organized into these 3 different sections of wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And these 8 factors, you can almost think of them as like individual dials. If you had a set of speakers and you had these individual dials that you could tweak these dials and get a better and better sound out of the speakers, you would tweak these dials and kind of hone in and fine tune this machinery in order to get a really good quality sound out of the speakers. Well, this Eightfold Path is the same way. You're tweaking this in your life practice. You're developing this life practice, and as you tweak these individual dials and dial it in closer and closer in your life, you get a better and better quality of mind. Your mind can be focused, concentrated, having clarity of mind and deep memory. You can experience where your personal and professional relationships will really blossom because you no longer have the harshness and the roughness and the bitterness and the resentfulness in your relationships. You can eliminate all of that from the mind and thus your relationships. Your mind and your life can be peaceful and joyful for the rest of your life. Once the mind gets to enlightenment, it will never again experience anger ever again. You'll never experience sadness or frustration or any of these other discontent feelings. So you're dialing in these 8 individual dials, developing your life practice to be able to practice this more and more closely. So as we go, I will open up to questions where you guys can ask any and all questions that you like. Those of you online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. Also, for those of you guys here at the temple, as you ask questions, if you just raise your hand, we have microphones here in this white bowl, so that way the people online will be able to hear your question. And for those of you guys here, if you would like to use the bathroom at any point, we have a bathroom in the back of the room. It's the last door. And we even have water that students provide to allow you guys to use the water and have water if you like. Just make yourself comfortable, and you guys can do whatever you like in order to be comfortable. So the first thing that you need to understand as part of the Eightfold Path is the step of right view. That's the very first step. And here's the words of the Buddha on right view. He says, "In what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view." So here he's pointing to another teaching. There's a teaching called the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha goes into detail about the cause of the problem. The problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of that problem, and then the path forward to completely eliminate the problem from the mind. So here in the Eightfold Path, it's this core central teaching, and then he's got other teachings that connect into it. And here in the Eightfold Path, he's explaining that right view is the Four Noble Truths. He's pointing to that teaching. And what I've done underneath of this line is I've put the top section of the Four Noble Truths. Below this is his words on the Four Noble Truths. But here what I'm doing is I'm just showing you that connection so that then you can see what the Four Noble Truths are and you can understand the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. And this is what I taught last week on Sunday as part of this program. So just a little bit of a recap is, first, in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to understand the 3 universal truths. The universal truth of impermanence, discontentedness, and non-self. These are 3 individual universal truths that I taught last week. I helped you to learn it, to reflect on it, to independently verify it, and then to practice it. And if you weren't here last week, it's okay because all these classes are recorded. I have books that I help you to get access to at no cost. And there's resources like podcasts and personal guidance and things like this to be able to help you understand the 3 universal truths. You're going to need to understand impermanence, that things are constantly changing in the world, that they arise, they change, and they fade away. You're going to need to understand the universal truth of discontentedness, which the mind in the unenlightened state is experiencing conditioned feelings. Based on some condition, the mind gets these pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. So if you see that it's sunny outside, you might get excited or happy based on the condition of the sun. But because the sun is impermanent, meaning it's not permanent, then when the sun is no longer there, when it's maybe raining, you might get sad or frustrated. Because if you base your inner feelings on some condition like the sun, then it's only a matter of time before your mind moves from the pleasant feelings to the painful feelings. So if you base your inner feelings on the amount of money you have in your bank account, whether your mom or dad calls you, whether your car is one type of car or another, whether your boss does this or that. If you base your inner feelings based on these impermanent conditions around you, you can't experience permanent happiness. Because if you base your inner feelings on an impermanent condition like the sun, then as soon as it's no longer sunny, your mind will move to anger or frustration or sadness or some other discontent feeling. So the Buddha is explaining in the universal truth of discontentedness what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, these three feelings. And then there's this universal truth of non-self, where you're understanding how the mind clings to a self-image and a self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. If you're clinging to the body, you're clinging to the mind, thinking that this is who you are, when you spill something on your clothing, you'll experience embarrassment. Or if somebody comments in an agreeable way about your self-image, you'll get pleasant feelings. Or if somebody says something degrading and disparaging about your self-image, you will experience painful feelings. And you can't control what other people say. And you can't control what other people do. So as long as you cling to your self-image and your self-identity, thinking that this is who you are, maybe your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, maybe your job or your occupation, a certain role that you fulfill in the world, if you cling to these things as thinking that this is who you are, then your mind will be shaken up. It's only a matter of time. So the Buddha explains this universal truth of non-self, that there is no self. There's no you there, that this body nor this mind is you. Then I explained to you guys the definition of craving, desire, attachment. This is helping you to understand this word framed in Buddhist teachings. Also wants, expectations, grasping, holding, clinging. This is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, wanting things to be permanently pleasing. The unenlightened mind is chasing after objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. If you've ever been in the mall and you're like, oh, a new pair of shoes, oh, I got to have those. Or, oh, a new phone, new computer, new clothes, new video game, whatever it is that your mind's chasing after. Maybe you want more money at work and you just want it and want it and want it and want it. Or you're just chasing after a bigger house or a bigger car or this thing or that thing. The mind's thinking that some object is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction, so it chases after it. This is called craving, desire, attachment. The mind's not in the middle. It's longing and yearning. Rather than pursuing the needs and what you need in life, the mind pursues these wants, these expectations, these cravings, these desires. There's a longing, yearning in the mind. And there's a spectrum here. The craving, desire, attachment, there's the strong ones, like kind of like what I'm describing now to be able to help you guys understand it. But then there's kind of these little basic simple ones where you're just kind of annoyed and irritated if you don't get what you want. Essentially, the unenlightened mind, if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. If you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. This is because of craving, desire, attachment. And it's explained in the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is explaining the problem that all unenlightened beings are going to experience discontentedness, those conditioned feelings of pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. The mind is going up and down and up and down. This is the problem in the unenlightened mind. This is caused and explained in the second noble truth. The cause here is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. The mind wants things to be permanent, when in reality, everything around you is impermanent. So the mind chases and chases and chases. So if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement. If you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like sadness, anger, or others. So if you are in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you got all these pleasant feelings based on the condition of having somebody that is showing you affection, now when that relationship is over, now the mind will feel sad or angry or frustrated because the mind's craving for this relationship to be permanent. The mind wants a boyfriend or girlfriend to be permanent. And when you're confronted with impermanence in the unenlightened state, the mind lacks wisdom of that natural law. It lacks wisdom of this universal truth of impermanence. So it doesn't like this impermanence. One way to say this is that the mind craves permanence. Another way to say it is the mind does not like impermanence. So the mind is causing itself to be angry or frustrated. We will typically blame other people for anger or frustration or any other discontent feeling that you have. You might blame other people. But the mind itself is causing these discontent feelings, and that's why you can actually eliminate them, because the mind is causing these feelings itself. And understanding what the cause of the problem is will be able to set you up to be able to actually eliminate it. If you didn't understand what was causing the problem, you wouldn't be able to eliminate it. So that's why the Buddha is explaining to you the cause of the problem in the second noble truth is this craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning in the mind, chasing after the objects of your affection. So once you understand what the cause is, then you can actually implement the solution, which is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. When you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, then your mind can be peaceful. And this is how people know that they're enlightened, is that you can go 1 year, 2 years, 3 years without any anger, any frustration. Even the slightest dislike is eliminated from the enlightened mind. So as you implement the teachings of the Buddha, you can eliminate the craving, desire, attachment. And the way to do that is described in the fourth noble truth, that the path to enlightenment is the Eightfold Path. The way to eliminate discontent feelings is the Eightfold Path. So the very first step of the Eightfold Path is right view. Right view is having the right view that your mind is causing its own discontentedness. Wrong view would be to be blaming other people. And when you have wrong view, thinking that other people are causing you to be angry, what the unenlightened mind will tend to do is you'll tend to push people out of your life. This is called aversion. You will think that this other person is causing you to be angry or frustrated, so you'll push them out of your life, thinking that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't, because you just get angry or frustrated about something else. Or you will become bitter and harsh and hostile towards somebody through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And then they'll choose to leave out of your life because they're not interested in being around harshness and bitterness. Or the third thing that you might do when you have wrong view is put your expectations on somebody, trying to control them to do things your way. And if you can just get them to do things your way, then you think that, okay, everything's perfect, because you get your cravings fulfilled, you get those pleasant feelings, and you think that this was a worthwhile pursuit because you were able to convince these people to do things your way. So as long as you have wrong view, you can't live harmoniously with all beings. The number of people that you can spend time with becomes fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer, because your expectations grow and grow and grow and grow. And there's fewer and fewer people in the world that can fulfill all those expectations. So as long as you have these cravings, desires, attachments, you'll continue to get angry, you'll continue to get frustrated and irritated, and there'll be less and less people that you can spend time with in the world. But by practicing the Eightfold Path, this is the solution, that you can eliminate and train the mind. You can eliminate craving, desire, attachment, train the mind to reside harmoniously and peaceful. The second step of the Eightfold Path is called right intention. Right intention, or sometimes it's translated as right thinking or right thought. This is 3 aspects to this step. Right intention is right intention of having the intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, and the intention of harmlessness. These are 3 things that you need to cultivate in the mind through your thinking or your thoughts or your intentions. What renunciation is being willing to let go, willing to eliminate unwholesomeness from the mind, willing to eliminate your false beliefs and your opinions and views. But you're not doing that blindly. What you're doing is you're learning teachings, you're reflecting on them to independently verify them, and you're practicing them. And then as you gain this wisdom, you realize that you have a certain false belief or a certain opinion that's inaccurate. And one of the first false beliefs that an individual needs to eliminate on the path to enlightenment is that other people are causing you to be angry. This is one of the first things that you need to confront on your journey to enlightenment, that you have potentially this false belief that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated. You can independently see for yourself that your mind is craving, it's longing, it's yearning. In every situation that we've ever been angry or frustrated, there's something that the mind wants that it didn't get. So for example, if mom and dad buy us chocolate, we get happy and excited. But then when mom and dad don't buy us chocolate when we're a little kid, we get angry and we get frustrated and we think mom and dad are causing us to be angry, and we might be bitter and temperamental towards them. This is because of the craving, the longing, the yearning, the wanting. Whereas if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. And if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. So having the intention of renunciation is essentially having an open mind and realizing that you currently do not know everything that you need to know in this world. If your mind is experiencing anger and frustration and annoyance and all these other discontent feelings, then you haven't learned everything you need to learn yet. There's still wisdom to cultivate. There's certain false beliefs and certain lack of wisdom that's in the mind. And renunciation is to be willing to let that stuff go. And you do that through cultivating wisdom and being able to see the truth. The intention of non-ill will, this is a double negative. It's essentially goodwill. It's having the intention of goodwill, because non-ill will is goodwill. And goodwill is what we call loving kindness, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. That's what you need to cultivate as part of your intentions and your thoughts and your thinking, that you would like to see all beings in the world be well. And then the third aspect of right intention is the intention of harmlessness, where you're incapable or disinterested in causing harm to other beings. Because as long as you're causing harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. This is the natural law of Gotama, of cause and effect. If you cause harm to others, then harm is going to come back to you. And this is the unwise decisions that we make in the unenlightened state, because we don't understand the natural law of Gotama. There's a certain unknowing of true reality. Some people refer to this as ignorance or delusion or confusion or misunderstanding. The mind misunderstands, it's confused. And one of the things it's confused about is that other people are causing you to be angry. So if you develop the intention of harmlessness, then you're disinterested and incapable of causing harm to another being. And therefore, by you not causing harm to others, harm won't come back to you. By you making wise decisions to practice harmlessness, by you making that wise decision, then wholesome things will come back to you. But you need to gradually build this up over time, where more and more in your relationships, you're practicing harmlessness. Right now, in the past, you haven't been practicing these teachings or others. So there's certain relationships where people might be bitter and harsh and hostile to you. And that's because you've been bitter and harsh and hostile to them. And now everybody's going back and forth, being resentful and bitter and harsh with each other. But as you transform your mind and you start functioning differently in the world, then the people around you will start functioning differently in the world as well. And you'll make improved decisions. So this is the intention, the right intention. And this rounds out the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. So just to kind of summarize this section, right view is the Four Noble Truths and accepting responsibility for your feelings, your intentions, your speech, your actions. As long as it's everybody else that's causing the problem, you'll never fix the challenges that you have in your life. If we keep blaming other people for all the things we experience in our life, then we'll never be able to fix what's going on in our life. So by having right view, you understand that your feelings and your emotions and the things that you're experiencing in your mind are being caused by your own mind. And the power of that is that if your mind is causing all of these, which it is, and you can independently verify that, then that means you can eliminate it. If it's everybody else that's causing you to be angry, then you've got to train 8 billion people to do things your way. Right? If everybody else is causing you to be frustrated and irritated, then you need a training program to train 8 billion people on the face of the earth to do things your way. And then there's people being born all the time, every day. So you're going to need to train them as well, right? Or you can see the truth and establish right view and see that your mind is causing these feelings itself, accept responsibility for that, independently verify through reflection that you can see your mind's causing its own discontent feelings. Then when you accept responsibility for this and you see your own mind is causing these discontent feelings, then you can take action to fix it. This is part of establishing right view. It's not about fault or blame. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are about. He's just helping you see the truth of what's truly going on so that then you can actually fix it. Right? And now, right intention, this is practicing the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Okay? Do you guys have any questions on this first section, right view or right intention? You guys can ask here at the temple or online. You can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. Someone online is saying that the camera is not working. Okay, I just rebooted the camera and it should start working again, but I'm not 100% sure. It's been having issues the last couple days, so I might have to get a new one. This is a really old camera that I pulled out of a cabinet to use for live streaming a couple of weeks ago. So I think I might have to buy a new camera. So sorry about that for those of you guys if the camera's not working. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online, and I don't see any questions here. So let's go on to the next section, which is right speech. And remember, as we start talking about this moral conduct section, remember that it's this cause and effect or action and result. It's the natural law of karma that the Buddha is explaining to you. So here under right speech, he's not giving you rules or commandments. He's not telling you what to do. He's just explaining to you the natural law of karma so that you can gain this wisdom to be able to see the truth for yourself. And then as you improve your practice, you'll see your relationships improving, both personally and professionally. As you practice things like right speech, right action, and right livelihood, your personal and professional relationships will blossom because he's sharing with you how to not cause harm. And by you not causing harm, then this harm won't come back to you. So here under right speech, he says, in what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So here you can take each one of these and you can reflect on it. So this is the learning, just understanding what he taught, and then you can reflect on it. Think about times when you've lied or when other people have lied to you. What did you experience when you lied? Did you experience wholesome results? And when people lied to you and you discovered their lies, did you think fondly of them? Of course not, right? So you can see that he's explaining to you the natural law of karma, that it's wise to tell the truth. Then he talks about slander or gossip, where you're damaging someone's reputation through your speech. If you're causing harm in this way, then harm is going to come back to you. If you've ever slandered people or you've ever gossiped, then you know that people probably gossiped about you too. And people talk negatively about you and tried to damage your reputation. Or if you watch the news, if you see a politician stand up and start gossiping and slandering another politician, it's only a matter of a few days before somebody stands up on the news and gossips about that person, right? And slanders that person. Slander, as long as you're damaging someone's reputation, this harm will come back to you. And people have even been murdered over slander. If you see some individuals, I'm not saying it's right or it's wise, but if you see some certain journalists that might talk negatively and slander certain people, they end up dead. They end up murdered, right? This is the harm that's coming back to them as a result of that. And I'm not saying it's wise to murder people. I'm just showing you the natural law of karma so that you can see the truth that slandering people, whether it's true or whether it's false, it's unwise to go out into the world and talk negatively about other people, whether it's true or it's false, because it's going to come back to you, because this slanderous speech, this gossip is harming others, so the harm is going to come back to you. The third one, the Buddha is talking about harsh speech. This is your tone, your tempo, in your word choice. If your tone, your tempo, or your word choice is harsh, hostile, aggressive, bitter, as you've done that with various people in your life, did it turn out well? Right? Did it turn out to produce wholesome results for you? And of course not, right? We've all seen that. We've done that at different times in our life. So if you purge this from your life practice, where you refrain from harsh speech, then by improving your tone, your tempo, and your word choice, and you speak gentle, you'll see that your personal, professional relationships will blossom. And then the fourth one here is called frivolous speech. Frivolous speech, or sometimes we refer to it as idle chatter. This would be like yada 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 yada. If you've ever done this, or you know someone that has, it's not a conversation. They're broadcasting. Right? They're broadcasting. Maybe they're talking 10, 20, 30 minutes. There's no way to have a conversation. And your mind is just like, oh my goodness, when is this person going to stop talking? Oh my goodness, right? If you've ever done that, or you know people that have, this is causing harm. You're not going to be able to be influential if you're just yada, 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 yada. So this is the first layer of the right speech. The Buddha is explaining to you about lying, about slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. With frivolous speech, someone just has a craving to talk. They're just longing, yearning to talk. But then as you clean this up in your life practice, there's a deeper teaching called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech that the Buddha plugs into the Eightfold Path to further help you understand how to practice right speech. He talks about speaking at the right time. What this means is making sure you're not interrupting people, making sure that your mind is calm and peaceful, because if you're agitated or annoyed, that's the wrong time to talk, because the only thing that's going to come out of your mind is anger and hatred or ill will, if that's what your mind is experiencing. So part of speaking at the right time is making sure that your mind is ready to talk. If you're agitated or annoyed or you're discontent, it's the wrong time to talk. And the third aspect of speaking at the right time is making sure the person you're talking to, it's the right time for them. If somebody walks in from work and you jump on them right away when they come home and start talking to them, it's the wrong time to talk. Let them come in, put their stuff down, maybe get some water, get something to eat, take a rest, maybe 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. You ask them, hey, how was your day? How's things going? Is this a good time to talk about something really important? And they might say yes, and they might say no. And then you can talk as they say, yes, this is a good time to talk, right? So you might be observant of other people's mind. So speaking at the right time is being sure you're not interrupting, being sure you're aware of your own mind, and being sure you're aware of the other person's mind. Then you can have a successful conversation. Then speaking the truth, that one is covered in the right speech of the Eightfold Path, but here in the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, the Buddha is explaining that as well. Then he says, speaking gentle. Again, this is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. If you pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice, you'll have very wholesome conversations. You'll have very wholesome outcomes in your conversations. Then the 4th factor is speaking beneficially, making sure that as you speak, that it's beneficial to others. If you aren't speaking in a beneficial way, if it's just yada, 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 it's not beneficial to anyone, right? So there you're going to be less influential in your community. And then the fifth factor is speaking with a mind of loving kindness. When you speak with a mind of loving kindness, your word choices are going to be different, right? When you speak with a mind of inner hate, now you're going to be causing harm. So what the Buddha is exposing you to here is the natural law of karma, helping you to understand the cause and effect, the action and result. By you choosing to speak this way wisely, you will see improved results in your life. So now that you've learned this, you can reflect on it and you can see the truth for yourself, that in situations where you didn't use the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you and or the other person wasn't speaking at the right time. What you said is true. You spoke gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. When you didn't speak that way, the conversation didn't go well because you and or the other person wasn't speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But also, you can look at situations where your conversations did go well. And even though you didn't know these 5 factors at that time, you and or the other person was using these 5 factors. And the conversation went really well for you. That's how you can independently verify that this is true, by looking at your direct experience in your life to be able to compare and contrast whether this is truly the 5 factors. If you just miss one of these factors, there's the potential that your conversation could have an unwholesome outcome. So now that you're aware of these, what you would like to do is dial this in closer and closer in your life, in all your conversations, whether it's your mom, your dad, your brother or sister, your life partner, your children, your neighbor, your boss. It's going to be challenging for you in certain situations where you have cravings, desires, attachments. It'll be more challenging to practice right speech. But more and more, as you develop your entire life practice to include meditation and other teachings I'm going to share with you today, it'll get easier and easier for you. You'll be able to bring down your cravings where you're not longing and yearning, and you can practice right speech more closely. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is develop something that we call in Thai language, we call it barami. This is a Thai word. It's called barami. What barami is, it means the one who people listen to. That's how it translates into English. Barami. If you establish barami, that means you're one who people listen to. And now you can be influential. You can be helpful in your community and in your family and in your relationships. But the way you establish barami is by practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. If you didn't practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you're not going to be influential in your community. People are going to see you as unwise. So by you practicing this more and more for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you can be influential at work and in your personal relationships as well. There's a lot of detail in the first volume of the book series around right speech. This is just a little bit of it, but there's a lot of content there because you would like to practice right speech. During the lifetime of the Buddha, there was only speech. That's the only thing that existed. Nowadays, we might think about this as right communication, right? There's other details in the book beyond just what you're seeing here in the class. Right communication is to practice all forms of communication using right speech. Where if you were speaking using right speech, but if your social media or your email, your text messages didn't have right speech, you're damaging your relationships. You could go to a job interview and do really well and use right speech. But if those people got on the internet and saw your social media and it had aggression and hostility and other aspects in your social media post, you might not get the job. Right? So you would like to have all your communication using right speech, where it's polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to all beings. Sometimes we feel like I can't be respectful to that person until they respect me. Sometimes people are taught, don't respect others until they respect you. That means you're holding your respect back and you're not going to respect anybody until they respect you. Well, if everybody was doing that, nobody would be respecting anybody, because everybody's waiting for somebody else to be respectful. This isn't how you improve your life. You need to practice first in order to clean up your relationships. If you would like people to respect you, you need to practice respect. If you would like people to love you, you're going to need to practice being loving. If you would like people to be appreciative and have gratitude towards you, you're going to need to be appreciative and have gratitude towards others. And as you put this out, this is what comes back to you. So whatever you put out in your speech it's going to come back to you. People are going to treat you the same way that you treat them. So the more wise you can be of this natural law of karma, and you can function in this way, people will function that way more and more with you. So you can see the book to learn more about right speech, because that's where the full details are. And you can ask questions about it as well. Then there's right action. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. Here he's giving you 3 major actions that you could do with your body that would cause harm. And by you causing harm with the body, this harm is going to come back to you. But notice he doesn't say don't walk up to somebody and punch them in the face. Well, if you understand right action, you understand that it would be unwise to walk up to someone and punch them in the face, because then they're going to want to punch you back. They might have a knife, they might get a gun, their friends, their family might come attack you. So he's not giving you a complete list of every single action that would be unwise to do. He's giving you 3 major ones, but you need to get in touch with what right action is. It's causing harm through your bodily actions. So if you were to drag a suitcase down the aisle of a plane and run over people's feet and hit their knees, this would cause harm. So therefore, people are going to get aggressive and hostile and bitter with you on the airplane. So if you would practice right action, you would intentionally walk down the aisle with your suitcase and be sure not to bump into anybody. And as you accidentally bump into somebody, you would say, sorry, I apologize, right? You would immediately make amends because you made a mistake. No big deal, right? But if you just haphazardly walk through the airplane and plow through the airplane with your suitcase, you're going to have a lot of hostility coming at you as you cause harm with your bodily actions. So here, the 5 precepts is another teaching that plugs into the Eightfold Path. We're going to be studying this in 2 weeks. It's part of chapter 7. It's going to explain to you more details around taking life, taking what is not given, and sexual misconduct. The Buddha explores this and he explains it in full detail. But just to give you a heads up about sexual misconduct, there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha where he says same-gender relationships are sexual misconduct. Sometimes you might hear somebody talk about that, but if you look at what the Buddha taught about sexual misconduct, he never explains that same-gender relationships is sexual misconduct, because he's looking at what causes harm in the world. If there's a man and a woman who's together and they choose to have a loving, consenting relationship where there's sexual contact, they're not causing harm with anybody. It's a male, it's a woman, they're having sex and they're loving and consenting, they're not harming anyone. And the same thing is true about a male and a male or a female and a female. They're choosing to have sex with each other. It's a loving, loyal, consenting relationship. It's not possible for every man to be interested in having sex with a female. And it's not possible for every female to be interested in having sex with a male. If that was true, then the universal truth of impermanence wouldn't be true. If you look around the world, there's nothing around you that is permanent. So if every single male was interested in having sex with a female, that would be permanence. Or if every female was interested in having sex with a male, that would be permanence. And that just doesn't exist. So when the Buddha taught about the sexual misconduct, he talks about harmful decisions like raping, like going outside of an existing relationship, having sex with minors, things like this. And he explains why these things would be harmful. So when we get to the 5 precepts 2 weeks from now, I'll explain sexual misconduct in more detail. But because some people associate sexual misconduct with same-gender relationships, I'd just like to highlight it here for a little bit. And then in 2 weeks, we'll explore this topic in a lot more detail, along with taking life, taking what is not given, and sexual misconduct. You'll see the original words of the Buddha where he expands this for you and really illuminates this. Here, he's just summarizing it and pointing to the 5 precepts. Then there's right livelihood. In right livelihood, the Buddha says, in what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. And then here, what he's doing is he's just talking generally about right livelihood, but he has other teachings that explains to you right livelihood. Here, he's just saying, okay, a student who's practicing the teachings really well will have given up wrong livelihood. What livelihood is, this is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. If you choose to sustain your life in the world based on harming others, like your job, your occupation, if you're harming people through your job or your occupation, and that's how you earn a living, then that harm is going to come back to you. And the Buddha gives 5 livelihoods that would cause harm. Again, this is based on the natural law of karma, of cause and effect. And you can learn this, you can reflect on it, and you can practice. So the learning part is the Buddha shares with you that business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons, he says this is going to cause harm if you sustain your life on these things. And then that harm is going to come back to you. So, okay, that's our learning. Now let's start reflecting on this, because the teachings of the Buddha are explaining to you this cause and effect. Let's take a really easy one to see, like substances that cause heedlessness. If you stood on the street corner and you sold cocaine or heroin or crystal meth, this is causing harm to the community. The community is now purchasing these things. It's causing heedlessness in their mind. People are stealing, people are robbing in order to give you money. So now you're going to experience the results of those decisions. You're going to potentially get beat up. You're going to get robbed. You could get murdered. You can get arrested. You can get addicted to those substances yourself. These are all harmful things that are going to happen as a result of the unwise decision to have a business in substances that cause heedlessness. Now, the substances that I mentioned typically are illegal in most places, like cocaine, heroin, crystal meth. But this natural law of karma is a natural law that is functioning at a much higher level than the human laws that we've created. The human laws are imperfect. Because human beings are imperfect, we can't create laws that are created and administered and enforced 100% perfectly. Even though we aspire to do that, it's not possible for us to do it. But the natural law of karma is functioning with 100% perfection. So if you look at this natural law of karma in this right view, where the Buddha is talking about it would be unwise to have a livelihood where you're selling substances that cause heedlessness, you can look at things like working in a liquor store that sells alcohol or whiskey or beer. Now, by the human law, it can be legal for you to do that. Like your government could tell you, like, yes, you can open up a liquor store, or you can be a cashier in a liquor store. You can mop the floors of a liquor store. You can do those kinds of things. It's legal by human laws. But if you understand the natural law of karma, then you can see that liquor stores oftentimes get robbed. People come in and rob you, or people beat you up, or people have been murdered. So even though you're just mopping the floor at a liquor store and this is your livelihood, you could easily get beat up, robbed, and murdered in this livelihood, because you're choosing to contribute to a livelihood where it's causing harm in the community. So this is the natural law of karma. Again, it's not punishment and rewards. It's just showing you this cause and effect relationship, this causality, that when you make a decision to do something, now there's going to be a certain result as part of that. And you can go through each one of these and you can independently verify for yourself through your reflection. And then when you practice this, then you'll see the truth, that you're not causing harm through your livelihood, so therefore no harm comes to you based on your livelihood. Then the Buddha goes deeper into livelihood, and he explains how you perform your livelihood. Because potentially I could be a doctor or a police officer. It's not one of those 5 livelihoods. But if I do these things while I'm performing my livelihood, this is going to cause me harm. So if I was a politician, this isn't one of those 5 livelihoods that would cause harm. Being a politician doesn't cause harm. But if I was scheming, meaning I was corrupt in my duties as a politician, now I'm stealing money, I'm doing backhanded deals, I'm doing all these kinds of things. Now this is going to cause harm in the world. And now when that stuff is found out, I could lose my job and I could be out of a job. And now I'd have difficulty supporting myself. So the Buddha talks about scheming, which is like corruption. He talks about flattery. What flattery is this is like insincere comments just to try to get people to buy things from you. So if you were doing that in your livelihood, like you were just being insincere to your boss or your coworkers or your customers, people are going to see right through that, and you're going to have difficulties in your livelihood. Hinting, this is not being clear and direct in your job. If you're working on a project team, for example, and you're not being very clear and very direct about what it is that you're communicating, this is going to cause you harm in your livelihood, because you need to be clear and direct and concise as you're presenting your project, for example. Belittling is like degrading and disparaging your coworkers, your competition, right? If you are working at a job and you are belittling your competition, your customers are going to see that, and they're not going to be interested in buying things from you, and your livelihood is going to suffer. You're going to have difficulties having income to be able to sustain your life. What pursuing gain with gain is, this is like just showing up at a job to collect a paycheck. You're not really interested in the work. You don't really care about the products or services. You're not really motivated or enthusiastic about what you're doing. You're just showing up for a paycheck. You're pursuing gain with gain. And your life can feel very mundane. It can feel very boring if you've ever done that. So what the Buddha is trying to help you do is get to this life in this condition of your mind where you have motivation, you have encouragement, you have enthusiasm in the mind. So if you're just showing up to a job to collect a paycheck, you're going to be very bored. You're going to feel very mundane, unenthusiastic, because you don't care about the product or the service. You're going to dread going to work each individual day. So if you select a livelihood that you're enthused about and you're motivated and encouraged to do, now each day, it doesn't even feel like work anymore. You're showing up to a job that you thoroughly enjoy because you enjoy providing this product or this service. So these are ways that you perform your livelihood. There's other aspects of right livelihood that the Buddha teaches in this book series. When you get to volume 12, chapter 14, there's a deeper teaching, even more than what you're seeing here. Because what the Buddha is trying to help you do is get to the point where you're so enthused and motivated about the work that you're doing, it doesn't even feel like work anymore. If you can get to a point where you enjoy what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and be enthused and motivated in the work that you're doing, it's not even going to feel like work anymore. So you can get to that point where you have this peace and this joy about your work, and you don't dread going to work each day. But that's going to be based on your decisions. You need to learn how to select a livelihood for yourself that you can be enthused and motivated about. So the Buddha teaches you that in his teachings about how you can select a livelihood that you feel good about and you can feel whole. And now when you go to work, you can be enthused and motivated. So this rounds out our section on moral conduct, where the Buddha is teaching you how to not cause harm through your speech, your actions, and your livelihood. Remember, right speech, you can think about this as right communication, because you would like all your communication, whether it's verbal, text, chat, post, emails, it should all be harmless, practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And then you would like to look at your bodily actions and ensure that you're not causing harm through your bodily actions, because any harm you put out, it's going to come back to you. And then right livelihood is ensuring that when you are looking to sustain your life and choose a way to sustain your life through a livelihood, that you don't cause harm through your livelihood. And the Buddha provides guidance on how to do this. And it's up to you to learn it, to reflect on it, and practice it. Any questions on the moral conduct section here at the temple or online? Yeah. Looks like Samantha has a question.
I have a question about right speech. You used an example of speaking about someone and potentially having harmful effects from that. So my question is, if you, with the right intention and the 5 factors of right speech, say warn someone about someone who has bad intentions towards them that could be harmful, is that still okay, knowing that or believing that your speech is not harmful, but then knowing from the laws of Gotama that there are other people that might not see it that way, and you might have harm coming your way from speaking that truth? Or is it best not to say anything because inaction doesn't seem like the right thing to do either.
Yeah, so each situation is a bit different, right? The Buddha is not giving you like a decision tree, like if this happens, do that. If this happens, do that. Instead, he's providing you the wisdom to support you in your decision making. And then you need to look at all the variables and decide for yourself what would be wisest here. And then the natural law of karma is the best, most unbiased teacher, because whatever you do, you're going to experience a result. Whatever decision you make, you're going to experience a result. So you can look at that result and see for yourself whether it was a wise decision or an unwise decision. Because if it was a harmless decision, then you'll experience wholesomeness coming back to you. If it was a harmful decision, then you'll experience unwholesome results. So in a situation where you believe something is wise or unwise, you don't know the truth, whether it's true or false. You're interested to get away from belief and know for certain that this is wise or this is unwise. So in a situation where I think what you're describing is somebody has some ill intentions and you know about those ill intentions and you would like to warn this person and kind of give them a heads up. So you can do that without slander in any of this. So I'll give you an example. At one time, my wife and I knew that our sister's husband was cheating on her. And we actually suspected this. We dressed in all black one night, waited up until 2 a.m. We followed him on our motorbike, and lo and behold, he picks up this woman and they head off and, do whatever they're going to do. So our sister, came to us. We just kept this information to ourselves because we were trying to think about what we should do. Our sister ends up coming to us and said, "Hey guys, I think my husband's cheating on me. What do you know? What do you think?" And the response that we gave was, "Keep your eyes open, sister. Keep looking around." We didn't tell her yes or no. We just said, keep your eyes open. And within about 3 days, she was looking through his car and she found underwear of another female under the seat. So she knew it wasn't her underwear, and she discovered it herself. So we never put ourselves in a situation where we were delivering the news, that we just kind of alerted her like, hey, keep your eyes open, keep looking around. So these are the kind of things you can do where we didn't talk bad about our brother-in-law, and we didn't talk bad about the person that he was with or anything like that. We just said, hey, keep your eyes open. So now, even to this day, our sister has passed away 6 years ago. We're great friends with the husband, and he has another partner at this point, but they had kids together. So these are our nieces and nephews that our sister had children when she was alive. So we have a great relationship with our brother-in-law because we never said anything bad about him whatsoever. Our sister discovered it for herself. So there's ways to skillfully make decisions that you're not slandering, but you're helping this person. And this is where you need to practice. And sometimes what you need to do is, if you're struggling with a certain challenge, is come to your teacher and say, hey, this is the situation I'm in. My neighbor has these ill intentions for my sister, and, this is what's happening. And you explain the example, and then we kind of give you different advice and different guidance. And then what you choose to do is up to you. We just provide you thoughts and ideas to consider. So this is how you develop your practice and you develop your wisdom to understand what will be wisest in this situation. But you're the one who ultimately makes the decision. Mm-hmm.
For in the instance of perhaps people that are in a vulnerable position and not really able to maybe process information, or as you said, maybe discover things on their own, mm-hmm. That's just a different thought than, because the best practice in that situation might be different than for someone who is able-bodied and able to, in your sister-in-law's example, she was able to see things for herself, but there might be someone who's younger and not, mentally mature enough to work through that on your own.
Okay, so let me give you another example. My son, he's now 11, but when he was about 8, I think it was 8 or 9, he was playing with a bunch of kids in the village, and he was always playing with them and doing different things. And my wife and I could see that there were certain children that they were problematic. They were having certain behavioral things, and he would play with them and hang out with them. And we would say, hey, Bailan, my son's name is Bailan, we think that you should consider the people you're hanging out with. It's not wise for you to go to this person's house and hang out inside their house because of this reason and that reason and that reason. And he would say, oh, okay, I understand. But we wouldn't try to stop him from doing it. We would just let him do it. And then he would still make the decision to hang out with these friends. Well, within a few months, he was starting to have problems. They stole his bicycle helmet. They stole his bicycle at one point. They dumped some water on over his head and hit him with a bucket on his head and different things. And he would come home and he would tell us that these things were transpiring. And we said, okay, this is the reason why we suggested for you to consider the people that you're spending time with and making wise decisions about your friends. Who you choose to spend time with is up to you, but these are the advice that we have for you. So you can do those kinds of things where you're not trying to force or control somebody, but you're giving them advice. And when we gave them advice, it wasn't talking bad or disparaging the person. It was talking about the decisions that these people made. So like these children, they were making certain decisions that we could see that were unwise. They would lie. They weren't respectful to their parents. They were, being harsh and bitter and hostile with each other. So we weren't disparaging the individual. We were talking about the decisions that these children were making. And that's a way to maintain not slandering, not damaging somebody's reputation, but just talking about decisions and what's wise and unwise.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me check online and see if we have any questions here. Looks like we have something coming in on YouTube. So the question is how to practice right view and right intention. So I'm not sure if you were at the beginning of the class, but I did teach right view and right intention. Practicing right view would be to accept responsibility for your own discontent mind, and rather than going around blaming everyone, is look internally, be introspective, try to discover what are your cravings, desires, attachments. Rather than blaming other people for your discontent feelings, instead you look inward and you figure out what is the mind wanting that it's not getting. And this will help you to identify your cravings, desires, attachments. And there again, sometimes you need to come talk to your teacher. Just like you need to develop the skill and ability to practice something like meditation, you're going to need to develop the skill and ability to identify your own cravings. And this will be something that you need to develop over time. So consulting with a teacher and saying, hey, look, I'm really frustrated. I came home from work the other day. My wife had stuff all over the house and I got angry. I don't understand how my mind was causing that. Well, in this situation, a real life situation, the individual left from work, the house looked a certain way, they were craving for the house to look that way permanently, and then when they came home and their wife had the house looking a different way, they got frustrated because they didn't like that impermanence. They were craving permanence, and because of the craving, they caused their mind to be frustrated. So rather than blame, to practice right view, you would like to look inward and be introspective. And right intention or right thinking or right thought is cultivating the intention of renunciation, the non-ill will or goodwill, and harmlessness. So practicing renunciation is to train the mind to be open and understanding, that you are willing to eliminate the unwholesomeness. Practicing goodwill and harmlessness, you can accomplish this through loving kindness meditation, and then through your intention, speech, and actions, you become more loving and kind, where you're only interested in practicing harmlessness rather than causing harm through your intention, speech, and actions. And there's more detail here in the book, and we can explore this in personal guidance if you'd like more detail on that as well. Okay, what I'm going to do before going into the next section, which is the mental discipline section of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, is I'm going to take a little break here because we've been studying for about an hour and a half. I'd like to give you guys a chance to stretch your legs, maybe talk with each other, use the restroom if you like. It's now 10:30 essentially, and what we'll do is we'll take a 20-minute break. So we'll come back at 10:50, which will give you guys about 20 minutes to take a break. So those of you guys online, if you'd like to take a break as well, we're going to come back at 10:50, which is about 20 minutes from now. It's essentially 10:34, so that's really about 16 minutes from now. So enjoy your break, and if you'd like to come back and learn some more, I'll teach you the rest of the Eightfold Path, which is the mental discipline section, when we restart at 10:50. Okay, so thank you guys for your questions and your interest to learn. Okay. Okay, for all of you guys in Zoom, we should have the camera working again.
It's working now.
Thank you, Max. So now if that happens again, I'll know how to fix it, because what I did the first time didn't work. So now I know the trick to fix it. Okay, I'd like to welcome all of you guys back from your break. And we're going to continue with the Eightfold Path and helping you guys to understand each of these aspects of the Eightfold Path. We're now going to be moving into the mental discipline section. And once again, I'm going to be reading the words of the Buddha, and then I'm going to break it down and help you to understand it. So here, this sixth step of the Eightfold Path is called right effort. It says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent unarisen to produce unarisen wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort." So there's 4 aspects of right effort. There's 4 strivings that people describe here. This is the Buddha describing right effort. There's 4 things that you need to apply effort to. The first one is to prevent unwholesome mental states that have arisen to not arise in the mind. So an example of that might be killing a human being. You probably have no interest in killing a human being. It's not something that's remotely in your mind at this point. So the Buddha is saying prevent that from ever coming into the mind. Apply the effort to prevent that. Now that's just an example. There's other things that aren't currently in your mind as well. So you would like to prevent those things from coming into your mind. Then the second one is abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. So anything that's currently in your mind that is unwholesome, the Buddha is saying apply the effort to eliminate that. And these are just a couple of examples that I'm using to illustrate what you would do here. So the first one is if you have craving for sexual contact outside of an existing relationship, you know that that's going to cause harm. So if you have this craving coming up in your mind, you would like to apply the effort to cut this off, eliminate it, get it out of the mind. Then the third one, here's another example, the anger, frustration, irritation. If you have this anger, frustration, irritation arise in the mind, you know this is going to produce unwholesome aspects in the mind, so you would like to apply the effort to cut that off and eliminate it, getting it out of the mind. The third one here is produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. So if there's certain wholesome mental states that you learn about on this path that are not currently in your mind, the Buddha is saying apply the effort to cultivate those and develop those, bring those into the mind. An example might be generosity. You can understand as part of this path that generosity, giving and sharing with others, your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. This is going to help you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Well, if you know your mind is quite selfish and you don't practice generosity, then you're going to need to apply effort to bring this into the mind because you don't currently have this wholesome quality in the mind. Another example might be compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. The opposite of that would be indifference. If you were indifferent to the suffering of others and you could care less what happens to others, you're not having compassion. And if you observe that about your mind, that you don't have that wholesome quality, you're going to need to cultivate that. So you apply the effort to bring this wholesome quality into the mind. And then the fourth one is maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind. So this is any wholesome mental states that are currently in the mind. You support those, or you encourage them. Don't allow them to fade. Bring them to the full growth and perfection. So examples might be loving kindness. You might currently be loving and kind. You might currently have a certain amount of that in your mind, but you would like to support it, encourage it. Don't allow it to fade. Bring it to full growth and perfection. Or sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is like joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. So this is like the opposite of jealousy or envy. So if you notice that you're not quite, 100% having sympathetic joy, but you have enough sympathetic joy that when something good happens for somebody, you're like, oh, I'm glad for you. But maybe internally you're a little bit jealous. So to bring this to full growth and full perfection, you're going to need to support it and encourage it, not allowing it to fade. At least you're saying the words, but now you need to cultivate the mind further to be able to fully transform it to eliminate the jealousy and resentfulness. And loving kindness is this genuine interest in seeing other beings be well. Active goodwill. It's the opposite of hate or anger. And there's lesser versions of that. There's like irritation, annoyance. So as you practice loving kindness and bring it to full growth and perfection, then you're practicing right effort, where you're applying the effort to cultivate these wholesome qualities in the mind. So the 4 right efforts are to prevent unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind, to abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind, to produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind, to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind. These examples that I'm giving are just examples. The things that are unwholesome in your mind and the things that are wholesome in your mind are going to be unique to you. And each individual person needs to be aware of those things so that you can eliminate the unwholesome and cultivate the wholesome through applying right effort. And it's this next step that's going to actually help you to do this, right mindfulness. Right mindfulness is going to be able to help you be aware of what's in the mind to then be able to apply right effort. So here's what the Buddha shares on right mindfulness, and then I'll break it down for you. In what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware, and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware, and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware, and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware, and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. Here, what he's introducing you to is called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And he goes into detail about these in other teachings, but here he's introducing it to you. And let me help you understand what right mindfulness is. Generally, when you're first starting out, you can think about it as awareness of mind. This is a good way to think about it and just kind of cultivate this awareness of mind. Because when we're off the path to enlightenment, we're typically not aware of the mind. We're not aware of what's going on in the mind. It's typically just pursuing our cravings, our own selfish desires. We're just plowing through the world, knocking down trees and burning up the forest, right? And then we're like, what's all that smoke? I smell smoke. What's that all about? Oh, it's because you're plowing down the forest and you're burning it up. So when we have mindfulness, we have awareness of the mind, of what's going on in our mind. So that's the first aspect of developing right mindfulness. But then more deeply, you would like to establish the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is having awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. I'll explain to you guys what these are. This is essentially the life cycle or the process that discontentedness is going to go through as it's arising, and then it becomes more firmly rooted in the mind. When there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, there are certain things that you find agreeable, certain things that you find disagreeable. Now, when you have contact through the 6 sense bases of the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind, now when you have contact, you're going to experience something that's either agreeable and get conditioned pleasant feelings, or you're going to experience something that's disagreeable and get conditioned painful feelings. But before those feelings arise, any of that discontentedness arises, there's going to be some bodily sensation. If we use the example of anger, you might notice like tingling in the body, kind of rising up. You might notice a tightening of the chest, maybe a little bit of pain around the heart. Some people notice a tightening in their throat or heat in their face, or maybe pressure in the skull. These are bodily sensations that are occurring because there's craving in the mind, and now you're about to get angry. But it's not a feeling yet. It's just a bodily sensation. So there's going to be these bodily sensations that are arising. Then, after the bodily sensations, there's going to be a feeling that comes into the mind. Now the mind's angry, or now the mind's frustrated or irritated. Then it's going to start affecting the condition of your mind. If you've ever been angry for several hours or several days or a week or two, this is the condition of the mind. Then there's mental objects. In this example, there's ill will, where ill will becomes now deeply rooted in the mind. This is like a container, or we call it a mental object that's deeply rooted in the mind. This is the pollution of the mind. And this process is occurring where, because of craving, then you come in contact with something, then there's discontent feelings arise, either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Then it affects the condition of the mind. Then it forms this mental object like central desire or ill will or conceit or any of these other mental objects that are in the mind. And what you're trying to do with your mindfulness is be aware of these things so that then you can apply right effort to eliminate it. So that as you notice the bodily sensations arising, you can cut it off and let it go by applying right effort. Because if you notice that these bodily sensations associated with discontentedness are arising, you know if you allow that frustration to become a feeling, now it's going to pollute your mind, and you've got to deal with this feeling of anger or frustration in your mind. So if you can catch it as a bodily sensation and eliminate it out and don't allow the mind to actually form this feeling, this conditioned feeling, you're essentially rewiring the mind. You're no longer allowing the mind to base its inner feelings on some condition. So if you can get way ahead of the curve and catch it as a bodily sensation, you can rewire this mind to no longer experience conditioned feelings. But because you can't do this just at the snap of a finger, your mind's transitioning, you're going to experience some feelings sometimes that are conditioned as you're transitioning your mind. And as you experience those, you can cut that off and let it go there too. And then if you notice that you didn't cut it off as a bodily sensation, you didn't cut it off as a feeling, and it starts affecting the condition of your mind, you're noticing for a few hours or a day or two, you're angry or frustrated or agitated, you can cut it off there, right? And then all the while you're working on breaking up the mental objects. In this example, the ill will is being broken up by loving kindness meditation and by practicing loving kindness in daily life through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. So essentially, you're trying to get ahead of the curve here. It's like if you're taking a boat out in the middle of the ocean, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming in the boat. So that's what you're doing by cutting off the bodily sensations that are associated with discontentedness arising, is you're trying to prevent this problem from ever occurring where the mind is forming conditioned feelings. And then the way that you accomplish that is through developing right concentration, which is the next step. So the next step of right concentration is helping you to understand how to develop the quality of mindfulness and the ability to cut off and let go of these bodily sensations. So right concentration in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha is explaining the jhanas, which are preliminary phases that the mind experiences before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. But in terms of how to practice right concentration, he explains this in other teachings that plug into the Eightfold Path. So I'm not going to read the right concentration here because he's just explaining the results of practicing the entire Eightfold Path, which is important. You're going to need to learn this. But in terms of learning how to practice right concentration, let me explain to you how to practice it. The way that you practice it is you develop a daily meditation practice, and then you practice singleness of mind in your daily life. So your breathing mindfulness meditation, your loving kindness meditation, practicing 2 or 3 times a day, building up to 30 minutes or more, that's you practicing right concentration because you're having to focus on the breath. And when your mind's focused on the breath, you're developing focus and concentration. And you're doing that, you're exercising the mind. Just like you exercise a muscle and it becomes stronger and stronger, the mind is the same way. It becomes more stable and more steady when you exercise it 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. And some people take 6 months, a year, 2 years to build up to this kind of frequency. So wherever you are in your life right now, that's where you are. You don't have to put pressure on yourself, but you also aren't interested in being complacent. Gradually work to build up your practice to this level of frequency, and that's where you'll see the most benefit. Then in daily life, you would like to practice singleness of mind, where you're just training your mind to do one thing at a time. What we tend to do is talk on the phone, watch TV, eat a sandwich, or we're eating and you might be surfing the internet, or you're eating and watching a YouTube video, or you're writing a email and you're listening to a YouTube video in the background or something like this. The mind actually can't do two things at one time. You would have a very challenging time bringing forth your wisdom on things like right speech if you were talking on the phone, trying to watch TV and eat at the same time. You're probably going to damage your relationship and have to go back and clean that up. We think that we're actually accomplishing more, but you're actually not, because you're elongating the conversation, and you're going to have to go back and clean up the conversation because you're not going to remember everything you talked about, and you're not going to remember the things that you agreed to, and now it's going to cause problems in your life. So you would like to practice singleness of mind, where you're just doing one thing at a time. Now, of course, if you're cooking, you've got something in the microwave, you got something in the stove, you got something on the burner, and now you might be washing dishes, right? Those are machines doing different things, but you're just washing dishes. That's all you're doing. And then when you hear the buzzer on the microwave, you stop doing the washing of the dishes and you go to the microwave and you address that, right? So you're just doing one thing at a time, staying in the present moment. So this will be practicing right concentration. So just as a summary for the mental discipline section, this is right effort, where you're taking initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. Right mindfulness is having awareness of the mind and further developing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And you're doing that through the meditation that's helping you to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Then right concentration is practicing meditation and developing singleness of mind in order to experience the jhanas. And breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation are the 2 that you actually need to learn and practice in order to cultivate the mind and transform it. There's 2 specialized meditations beyond that, but that's really used on a case-by-case basis. So let me know what questions you guys have about this. This is the entire 8-fold path broken down into sections of wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. You can ask your questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Those of you guys here at the temple, if you have a question, we have microphones for you. You can ask your question so the people online can actually hear your question. You have a question, Sham? Sure. Yeah, go for it. There's a little button on the front. You just press it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello? Okay. So for right effort, if you could go to that slide, please, where the 4 points of it are...
This one here?
Right effort, sorry.
This one? Oh, right effort. Right. Sorry. Okay. This one or this one?
Yeah, this one. Thank you. So number 4, maintaining and growing wholesome mental states. Is that something that we're doing in the moment? As in, if you feel loving kindness, how do you try to grow that? And if you're not doing it in the moment, then is it work that you're doing kind of on an ongoing basis that is growing it? So, or is it both?
It's both, but you should always be doing everything in the present moment, right? Everything's present moment, like right now. So let's just say, for example, you're walking down the street and you're noticing your head's kind of low, you're feeling a little bit of sad, you're kind of looking at the floor, somebody's walking towards you, you look up and you're just kind of a little bit grumpy and irritable. Right? But you know that at other times in your life, you've been loving and kind. So if you're practicing right effort here and you're practicing to develop that in the mind and bring it to full growth, instead of just allowing the mind to be grumpy and irritable, You look up and you see the person, you're like, oh, hi, how are you? Or whatever you do, or you might smile, or you might do whatever. So that's supporting it and encouraging it, not allowing it to fade. Having this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. So wherever you see your mind is having any inclination of any of the wholesome qualities, they're not usually fully grown and fully developed because the mind's in the unenlightened state. So I know, like, you have a certain amount of loving kindness, but is it fully developed? Do you have loving kindness for every single being in the world? Is there any being in the world that you kind of like dislike and you're kind of irritable, or, you know, not feeling good about that individual or that group of individuals? So where you know that you do have a certain amount of loving kindness in some situations, but you don't have it in others, you're going to need to apply effort to cultivate this. And since we're talking about loving kindness, there's loving kindness meditation that you're going to need to apply the effort to practice that. But then when you go out in daily life, you're going to need to develop your intentions, your speech, and your actions with loving kindness and applying the effort to do that. Not being complacent or indifferent about that, but applying the effort and seeing that as a important aspect of your practice. Sometimes people think about their practice to get to enlightenment as just meditation. Like, that's my practice, is the meditation. But your meditation practice, if you follow the guidance that I'm providing, is only an hour a day, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening. And if you're doing a third one, that's 30 minutes. You still have all these other hours in your day that you're practicing the teachings. You should be practicing to cultivate loving kindness in your mind, in your daily life, as you're doing things in the world.
So the example that you gave is, to me, number 2, where you're noticing complacency and then you're arising loving kindness, right? But number 4 is like, okay, I feel loving kindness towards somebody and then I maintain it. And then if I notice that it's not as strong for this person or this group, then I can, in that moment, try to put some energy into increasing it. Is that kind of it?
What you're describing is true, but what I was describing is true as well. That whenever you're bringing in a wholesome quality, there's some unwholesomeness that you're moving out. So even though these are 4 individual steps and we could dissect them in 4 individual ways, not steps, but 4 individual factors of the step of the right effort, whenever you're eliminating an unwholesome quality, you're going to need to bring in a wholesome quality. So it's kind of like you're bringing in the wholesome quality to move out the unwholesome quality. So these things are working in concert together. It's not that you're just bringing in a wholesome quality, or it's not that you're just eliminating an unwholesome quality. You're doing these 2 things at the same time. You're eliminating an unwholesome quality and you're cultivating a wholesome quality. So those things are moving together. So the first one, where you're preventing an unwholesome quality from arising, okay, we can see that, right? Like, just keep it out. Just keep that unwholesome quality out. But whenever you're eliminating an unwholesome quality, the way that you do that is by bringing in a wholesome quality. So number 4, to support and encourage and not allow something to fade, like loving kindness. The reason why loving kindness is not at full growth and full perfection is because there's still some anger in there. There's still some ill will in there. So in order to get loving kindness to come to full growth and perfection, you're going to need to eliminate the unwholesome quality of anger in order to get the loving kindness to come in and support it and encourage it and not allow it to fade, bringing it to full growth and perfection.
Gotcha. And so it is both in the moment and the ongoing meditations that you're doing, like loving kindness meditation in this example. You want to do that every day?
The way that I think about it is everything is in the present moment. But of course, you have this plan, this objective, this goal to be practicing loving kindness meditation on a continuous, ongoing basis. And you have the plan or the goal or the objective to practice through your intention, speech, and actions to be loving and kind. That's kind of your overarching goal as part of the path to enlightenment, for example. But then in the present moment, you're like, okay, I need to meditate. You know what? I've been having a lot of anger. Let me do some loving kindness. And then when you go out in the world, you're like, okay, let me just really focus on the loving kindness, being loving and kind with as many beings as possible. And this is why the Buddha calls it right effort, because it takes effort. In the unenlightened state, those pollutions are in there. And it's sometimes like hitting a brick wall, trying to practice loving kindness with somebody that maybe has done something harmful in the past. Your mind's trying to let go of this anger. So it's a real effort. It can be a real struggle and difficult sometimes. But as you get rid of that ill will by applying right effort, the more and more you get rid of it, the more and more you arise loving kindness, it becomes effortless. It becomes so easy because it's so much easier to be loving and kind than it is to be angry. It's a lot of work to be angry. So when you get rid of the pollution of anger, hatred, and ill will, and you arise this loving kindness more and more and more and more and more in your life, it just becomes easy that by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have to apply right effort anymore because your mind is just always loving and kind. But in order to get there, you're going to need to apply right effort.
Thank you. I have one other question on right mindfulness. The next slide, if you could, please. Thank you. So I'm working on 4 foundations of mindfulness on a daily basis, and would it make sense to just focus on the body kind of as a default at all times? Because it seems like that's, the earliest you can cut off and let go. So like, for example, on my bike ride over here, I was on the back of a grab bike and I was having a general awareness of mind. And then now I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have focused on my bodily sensations instead of just a general awareness of mind. Or is it kind of both?
You're practicing the general awareness of mind, and then at any point you notice a bodily sensation associated with discontentedness, right? It's not just bodily sensation in general. It's not like you have an itch and, oh my goodness, I need to be so aware of that itch. That's just an itch. That's just a regular bodily sensation. The bodily sensations here are associated with discontentedness that is arising. So in general, you would always like to be practicing awareness of mind at all times. But then as you have contact through the 6 sense bases, if you notice any arising of any bodily sensation associated with any conditioned feeling, you would like to be able to notice that right away. Even those conditioned pleasant feelings have a bodily sensation associated with them, and you would like to clue into that and be observant and notice that sooner and sooner. So yes, you need to be aware of the bodily sensations associated with discontentedness arising, and you do that through practicing general awareness, and you need to also be aware of those bodily sensations, but you don't do that out of the detriment of not paying attention to the feelings, because depending on how strong your craving is, you might blow right past the bodily sensations or right to a feeling, right? This is what happens when somebody road rages, right? They go right past the bodily sensations. They're not even aware of the bodily sensations. They're not aware of their craving. They have a lack of wisdom on these things. So their bodily sensations, like, boom, it goes right to a feeling. There is a bodily sensation there, but it's happening so fast and so quick because the craving is so strong that there's no time to notice it. So that's why when you're doing breathing mindfulness meditation and you're slowing down the breath and you're focusing the mind on the breath, you're actually slowing the mind down. So you can get this longer and longer period of time where those bodily sensations are there. I noticed a good 8 seconds in the past where the bodily sensations were there and there and there and there and there and there, and then whoom, now it's a feeling. Right? So you can actually slow it down where early on you might not even be aware of the bodily sensations. They might be happening so quick and so rapidly. But as you do your breathing mindfulness meditation to develop these 4 foundations of mindfulness, it'll slow down and you'll get this longer and longer period. Even if you get 2 or 3 or 4 seconds, that's wonderful because you have the opportunity to now take action, applying the right effort to now eliminate that bodily sensation, because you know it's going to become a feeling if you don't cut it off and let it go. So yes, pay attention to the bodily sensations associated with discontentedness, but not out of the detriment of avoiding the feelings or the condition of the mind or the mental objects.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any questions online here. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online, and you guys have all your questions answered here. As you guys have questions, you can ask those through the Facebook group. You can ask them in classes. You can send private messages. You can schedule personal guidance sessions as well through our website. So let me just share with you what we're going to be discussing next week, which is chapter 6. The middle way, walking the middle way. This is the next chapter in our group learning program. And you can be reading that before class and or after class. And I'll be teaching it on Sunday at the same time, 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. I'll be here at the temple at 9 a.m. live streaming. And then at 9 p.m. I'll be at home live streaming from there. So you can be watching during the live class, or you can watch the replay or listen to the podcast to be able to digest any of these chapters as we go. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be in the second part of a 4-part series that I'm teaching Buddhist chanting. And once again, that's 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., either here at the temple and live streaming from here, or at home and live streaming from there. So thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for joining for today's class. Thank you for your dedication to learning. Perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee khap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.